think it'd be worth, because you know I've got these big surfaces and we've got CVs which are quite interesting because it's such a big surface, they go all over the place. But I thought it would be quite good to actually look at what the highlights look like on this, because if you try and keep the CVs as simple as possible and the lowest degree, lowest number of spans, then in general you end up with a better quality surface. So if I look at the ISOANG diagnosis, so this is from the Y direction, so it's looking at how these surfaces develop in terms of the tangency going across that surface. You can see that looks, you know, it flows quite nicely, even though those two different surfaces, they sort of seem like they almost join up, even though I've not aligned anything there. And then if we look at that in Z, not so clear what you can see that, but going up here, that looks quite smooth, and the side surface looks quite smooth. So, you know, just by keeping the surfaces big and simple, we generally get reasonably good highlights. Obviously, you know, that can be improved as time goes on, but you can see, you know, I've got two overlapping surfaces here. There's no alignment there, and yet the highlights pretty much flow across there, which is what my intention was, you know, to try and get those surfaces to flow together. I mean, they're not exactly flowing together, but if you do that, then you find that highlights often will just naturally come together. Now let's refer back to our little plan that we had. So this is what I was trying to do. So what I'm going to look at now is I'm going to try and, I know the patches have changed in here, and I'm not going to draw them all because it takes time just to draw them out again. But instead of having this separation here, we've actually got one surface here. I found that I can do that in one surface. So that's what we've got in this area. That's one surface going all the way from that edge around to there, and that all works nicely to the data. So rather than having that split up, so this is how, you know, as you start off with a patch plan, but very quickly as you start to put the surfaces in, you find that actually I can change this, I can simplify it, and you're always striving to simplify things. So it's this area in here is actually one shape going around here all the way down to that front edge. The front edge, because we've got the bonnet comes down here, that bonnet and this area actually all need to hang off the same surface, which I haven't got in yet. I mean, I could split it, so I could actually keep the surface that I've got, which comes all the way down to here, and then put a joining surface in here. But I think it would work better if I've got one surface here which things hang off, rather than splitting it, because the danger then is that you get a wobble going through there, whereas if I do that as one surface, we're going to get a better result in there. So I've got this, I'm pretty certain that line there needs to go at least up to here somewhere. We need to keep that as a sharp edge, so I'm going to do that, and I'm going to start trying to develop this area. It might be worth, no, I think I'm going to leave the front edge, because I said, you know, I want really one surface going all the way through there, but I'm going to leave that for the time being, and try and concentrate on this area here. One of the things I notice is that, you know, this surface here coming up to the wheel arch, of course, the section here actually changes quite a bit, and although we're quite close here, as we get towards here, we need to come out a bit. It may be, I mean, if you look at the data there, it actually flattens off, so quite a bit there, whereas, and it also does a bit of that here. So the surface that we're going to cover that area up with, which is this little series of surfaces in here, again, this might not be exactly what we're going to end up with, but something along these lines. So we've got an edge going around there, the blue edge here, and these edges here. I think I'm probably going to take it from the top, so it'll probably be that little surface there. We'll just sort of cover up the area where there's a mismatch between the side surface and the wheel arch, where it flattens off. And The other thing I want to do, because I said that this is going to be, you know, a hard intersect between these two surfaces. At the moment, those don't intersect each other, so we need to do something with that. So let's just take the sections off just so it's a bit clearer what's going on. So you can see they cross over there, but not up here. So what I really want to do is I want to get a line in there that I can use as the intersect between those two surfaces. So if I try and extend this, because we've got CVs here which start to push together towards the outside edge, which is the right thing to do, but when we extend that, it does tend to wrap up on itself. So if I extend it a long way, you can see it curves back on itself, and it's because of the spacing of the CVs. I think I can get away with just pushing that through, just extending it to a point where that looks like it intersects and it hasn't wrapped up too much. So I'm not going to adjust anything. But if you needed to, then one way, if it starts to wrap up on itself, then you can go back, you can use edge loop and slide and just push those holes slightly in that way so that the spacing becomes a bit more equal. I'll do that a little bit. So it's less extreme, the bunching towards the outside edge, and then when I extend it, it should behave itself a little bit better. I think we're going to get some, you know, some quite interesting looking CVs here, and I'm not going to worry too much about it because I think it's more important just to get the shapes in now rather than worrying about exactly where those CVs are. Because ultimately this surface, I mean, you can see they're pretty much on X stations there, but ultimately these surfaces are going to become much smaller because we're going to eventually convert them down into smaller bits probably, and when you do that, you know, when we reduce the size of a surface, which may look a bit odd at the size it is, but if you say reduce that, you can suddenly see that the CVs now look quite okay in that direction. So when you've got very large surfaces and the CVs are a bit weird, it's not necessarily a big problem when you later on as you develop the surfaces. So let's just extend that up again. I want to get an intersect between those two. And I've got history on there, and I've got curve on surface on both sides. So let's have a look at that. Now we know that this is going to be a hard line until we get to somewhere up here where it all comes smoothly together. And because it comes smoothly together, when we look at these surfaces here and we look at the sections through here, these well, the angle isn't actually getting too much closer, but this line here, because everything's going to flow together here, this line is less critical than here, where there's a very distinct angle between the two. As the angle becomes less, then we can actually move that curve on surface around, or we can move that common edge around. So I'm going to just adjust that slightly. The other thing, of course, is that while we're here, we can just have a look and see whether we're on this data. Towards the back end, we won't be on the data because this is rising up, and so we're going to be below the data here, so that's okay. As long as we're roughly parallel with those sections, then that's fine. Here we're back on the section. In the middle, it's less so. So let's take the CVs off that one. So I'm going to, I think if we go and pick individual points here, just lift that up a little bit. Like I say, I mean, previously I've been worrying about the CV patterns quite a lot. I'm going to stop worrying about them a bit now because I think it's, you know, it's probably too early to start tidying them up too much. Here, we just need to get back to that data. So I'm far too high on the data here. But I'm only moving those CVs in the Z direction. So at least in plan view, I know that they are a reasonable shape. The most critical thing is where you've got where this is coming along here, and then we're going to have another surface coming off at an angle, I need to be very close to the sections here. Otherwise, the intersect is not going to be in the right place. So it's less critical when you're on this bit. I mean, it's obviously the character that we want is got to be correct, but it's less critical here than it is here, where we're close to where the intersect would be. So you just have to go around staring and staring at the surfaces. I think again I've lost my pick box size. I'm going to make that 20 so that it doesn't keep on, so I can pick the points easier, because I'm missing them half the time, just because I'm trying to work a bit quicker. I might pull that one out in the Y direction as well. That's the other way in which to lift that up a little bit. I'm not trying to get around that section, of course, because that's going to be a blend between the two of some sort. And then this as I say, this curve on surface here, the intersect here. Let me just get rid of that one. So I'll just make that invisible. Now we're following the section here, but then, as I say, there's going to be a surface that comes around here that covers all of this area up. So the intersect between the two, the exact position of that intersect doesn't really matter too much, because it doesn't really exist in reality. And what I want to do is it just looks as though that wants to be a bit more horizontal. So if I look at that in side view, I probably want that a little bit more horizontal there. And because we've got history on, let's put CVs on here. Got history on that intersect there. I should be able to get that to rise up a little bit. So just by adjusting some of these CVs, but at the same time, of course, I want to be on the data. And it's going to be a combination of both the side surface and the top surface. And of course, when you got all of these CVs on, it becomes a bit difficult to see. Now, this side surface I've only got is degree 2 by 2. So I want to increase that degree just to give me a bit more possibility of, in this sense, I'm increasing the degree maybe to 5, because it's a big surface, we can get away with that. And it just means I can bring that out a little bit more locally. Otherwise, when I do a change here, it's going all the way back here. This is quite difficult to see. I'm going to take those CVs off. I'm going to leave that line as it is now. And I'm just going to save that. Now you could leave that as an intersect. Because this surface on the side is very simple, going up, it's degree 2. I think I want to leave that as it is, but this one I just want to trim convert it back to that intersect, just so I've got any edge there that's exactly where I want it to be. But I know that if I do a trim convert on that, it's not going to be 100% accurate because of the complexity of it, but it doesn't matter, we're sort of roughing it in a minute. So I can see, when I try and trim convert that, there's a pink dot there and a pink dot there, which means it's not quite on the end. And if I try and trim it, nothing happens. So I have to put extend on. Auto may work, but I've never, certainly in the past, it has worked occasionally where auto will just extend these automatically. But in fact, the tolerance is probably too low. So the tolerance, I think, is to the end there. So you can put in a bigger tolerance, and then that might work. No. So it's, no, it is actually working. But in older versions, it didn't tend to work very often. So we try that again. No. So let's try selected. So this is what I've always done in the past, is you just go select, and then you get these little arrows, and then you can extend that way, and then convert that into that surface there. Now the CVs go very crazy because we're trying to trim it. Well, they've gone very crazy. We're trying to convert it to something that's very different in shape. So I'm wondering, that seems to me to be a little bit too much. So I'm just going to open that up again. This is why I saved it, is because I didn't actually want to, when you do a trim convert, you sometimes get that sort of result where it's so crazy that it's not really very much use. Maybe what I can do is just extend that backwards a little bit. So this is where, to get the complexity of the shape, we might end up doing detaching this surface, splitting it into two, in order to get closer to those areas without such crazy CVs. So I think I'll just leave it as it is, just to an intersect at the minute, and we'll see if we can work with that. So let's bring this surface back in. So we've got that surface there. Now where all these join up, the surfaces, so we've got a surface to come in round here that we need, and when I drew that, again, the drawing's just a scheme, really, an idea of what we want to do. So I'm thinking that the obvious place to split these surfaces is probably right at the center, at the 12 o'clock position for the wheel arch, and then we can put in a curve going around this way and build a surface around there that connects those two together. So that line will actually join up with this intersect here. That's the plan. So let's go into curve, edit, duplicate, like so. And then we're going to offset that. So I want to keep the original CVs so that so that the CVs, because this is going to form this outside edge here. So I want to make that. I want to take that up to where the intersect is, roughly. So it's going to join up with there. And because we've got the same number of CVs and the same spacing of CVs, then when we put a surface between those two, it's going to be well behaved. We're going to get some good CVs on the surface there. So let me just put that onto a curve layer so we can see a bit closer. I'm looking at that thinking that this is obviously inside view. So when we're looking at that inside view joined up with that intersect there, we can project that on. So if I go and project that, curves Y direction, it's going to sit on that surface, and I'll project that onto there. Again, if I have match original on, it's keeping the same spacing of CVs as on the original. So I'll get rid of that one because that was just for guidance in that side view. I don't like the fact that this is very narrow all the way around, because the chances are that if you make it that narrow, then we're just going to end up with a lump through here, which is not good. So I want to actually make that bigger. So let's put the pivot point on here and just scale that non-proportionally in that direction. And the other thing is that we want this to tan into the top. We want that at least G1 into that intersect there. So let's go and do that. I'll make it G2 in fact. So projected curve and this curve on surface, and we want to blend that around there so we get a nice shape, something like that, with blend factor of 1, because then that's always the best one. If you're trying to hold this end and get everything to blend in between, then blend factor of 1 is the best one to go for. Because we've done some operations on that, it no longer is sitting on the surface, so I want to project that again onto that surface there. And then if we go and pick them, it's difficult to see which one's which, but that was the first one, and you can tell by the numbers on the end. It says 17 and 18. So if you've got curves on top of each other, or anything on top of each other, it's the lowest number is usually the one that you want. So I think that will hopefully cover more of that area. As with all of these things, we can change them later on if we find that that's giving us a problem. Now I want a surface between those two, so I'm simply going to do a skin between that curve and that curve. Now the skin goes all the way around, which we don't want, but we can modify the range. So let's go into here. So you've got these little arrows here. I mean, I could have trimmed that curve there, but because I've got so you notice it snapped to that point there, and that's because in the snap settings here I've got projected intersects and true intersects, so it picks up on the fact that that line crosses that one, and it allows you to snap to that point, which is very nice. And then this one I want to snap to there, so it's going across there, so that gives us that surface. And then we can, with that surface, we need at least G2 into the main block. It may not all be in the right place at the minute, the main block might change, but let's just put that in anyway. So if you want G2, then you're going to need at least degree 3 across this way. So if you make it degree 3, it's nice and simple. And I'll put that into that layer there. And then we can align that. So if I align that, it's going to project in the Y direction. I'm going to align that surface to here. And we want continuity check on. Now it says align failed with error 11. Not enough CV rows to sustain required continuity or number of blended rows. And the reason is because I've got blended on from last time, so I need to take that off. And then it says align was successful. It's successful, but I'm not sure whether it's the right shape at all. I think it's not correct at all. So I'm just going to, I might have just been, let's apply that to everything. I think the problem is that I'm aligning to this surface, and actually this surface isn't really applicable up here. So I'm not quite clear how I'm going to get around that, but I'm just going to leave that surface in there anyway. I'll get rid of the history on it. I think the problem is that we've got really this align should work into this main block, but we've then got this blend coming around here, and actually the alignment here needs to be into the blend, not into that main block. So in fact that surface isn't actually right. I mean, it's not accurate, but it doesn't matter anyway because it's completely wrong. From this point onwards, it needs to actually be aligned into the blend between those two surfaces. So I'm trying to build multiple surfaces here together. And trying to work out how this all works together. It's the sort of thing that when you look at when we looked at the, when we were doing this picture, it looks all quite straightforward when you look at the sections. But once you start to get into the detail of it, it's exactly how does this all come together? It's not so easy. So maybe what I'll do is I'll create another layer here. Call that body 1. And put that in there for the time being, just hide that away. I'll change the color because it's a reminder that it's quite an important surface in there. I can get rid of that curve, I don't need that. And there's a curve on surface there. I want to delete that because that's just going to probably cause problems later on, and we can always recreate that. So the other thing I need to do is start thinking about this blend here, and also how we trim all of this together. So let's first of all, I'm just going to extend this surface here a little bit. So the further we extend it, the better, because then you get much more of an idea of where the surface is going. Rid of that curve, that's just interfering with things. And the other thing we can do here is put some sections on in the Y direction, just to see how this flows through. So there's some adjustment there I can make to bring in that section together with the other one. Maybe. So to bring that up to that section there, I've then got to pull that down. And what I'm looking for, I mean, obviously I'm trying to get to the data, but also conscious of making sure that the two surfaces, this one and that one, overlap as much as each other, much as they possibly can. So that because then I'm going to trim, convert them back, or detach them, and then they should all flow together. So it almost won't matter where I detach them. That's the idea. Let's take the CVs off that one. So I'm now working on the surface at the back. I mean, we saw how the highlights were actually coming together very nicely anyway in this area. So it may not be necessary to improve this any further, but something like that. So that all flows together there. And then if we take those surfaces, and I'll take the wheel arch, and we'll look at that in side view. And then we just want to trim convert those to that point. Again, because I'm doing trim convert can change things so much that it's always worth saving it just in case. And so I'm going to put in I'm going to use that section there. I'm going to take that section as the one to trim convert to. So we'll go 3D trimming, project, Z. Oh, now got to be careful here because I've got the curve on surface here all the way along this outer edge. So I'll get rid of that. It picks up all these sections, which I'm sure isn't correct. Shouldn't be doing that. Yeah, so I want to trim convert those to that line there. Is this one here, and it's it's pretty arbitrary where that is. It's just choose a convenient spot, and because we've got a section there, we might as well use that. So let's go and trim convert, project that to. It's got to be the right section. Obviously, that's the wrong one. It's that one there, and then trim that there. I mean, the other safeguard here is if you have keep originals on, if you think it's all going to go horribly wrong, or I can just make sure that that looks okay before I commit to that trim convert. And then this one, trim convert to that section. So those look okay. And what will be interesting, I mean, you can see they are different in that area. They all need to come together at this point. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens there when I do that. So you can see it would come together if this was all part of the blend. So in other words, that intersect that I've got, probably the hard intersect sort of starts a bit later, really, if I align these together. Now, I don't know whether align is going to actually do this. If I try and align that, maybe there's a bit too much of a gap between the two, that maybe I should have worked on this surface and brought it a bit further into the blend to get it to split at this point. Or maybe I could have put the split between the two surfaces a bit further around the front, and that might be the thing to do. I might, again, I'm constantly going backwards and forwards, and this is why I save models very regularly. The thing is, if I do a G2 alignment on that, then it's going to modify that dramatically, I think. So I might have to readjust where I'm splitting that. It's actually not too bad, but it's made a big difference there. So I think what I need to do is get this coming into the blend a bit more. So I'm just going to open that model again. Let's have a look at that. So I think what I will do here is I'm going to put the split between the two surfaces a bit further forward. And to do that, I'm going to first of all extend this. So it's quite a long way around. And of course, you know, the CVs are now going to get even wilder than they were, but they're still quite structured in the sense that, you know, in plan view, they're still pretty much on X sections. They wobble in and out a bit, but it doesn't matter because of the size of this surface. We can iron those out at the later stage. So this gives us even more possibility of getting these tidy. So I'm just moving these CVs in the Z direction. If we're going to modify this end here, then we will have to work our way back up this surface to do that. And probably because of the size of this surface now, we'll have to increase the degree. So let's make it degree 7, because it's such a big surface. And then we can pull these CVs down, bring it back onto the data. There's probably a limit to, you know, there's a limit to how far you can extend this, because if I try to extend it all the way to the front, I'm never going to get there. So there will be a point at which maybe this lifts away and that it's closer to the sections here. Otherwise, everything would be one big surface. And so I want to feed into this actual blend here rather than having any sort of intersect between the two, between this surface and the side surface. So I'm moving that point in the Y direction as well as Z, just to get us closer to that data. Again, there's a bit of pushing that in the Y direction can help. Just get a bit closer to that data there. That one can go in the Y direction as well, and down in Z. We're deviating from the data, and that was a deliberate choice because I was trying to tidy up the wheel arch there. So the fact that it deviates from the data isn't important. I want to get it to the same section as the other surface. That's the important thing here. And as is so often the case, you know, we're zoomed in here And we've got to be very conscious that, you know, you zoomed into a detail, but then you've got to look at the big picture. You've got to keep coming in and out of that view to make sure that we're not doing anything silly somewhere else, you know. I'm struggling to get that exact shape in there. I could probably get a bit closer because this is quite flat and then tightens up. This could be a case of actually taking the whole of that front hull and just sliding it back towards the rear a bit. Oh, do that. I want to do the hull. So that one there. If I slide that back so that the spacing here is a little bit reduced, where it tightens up, then I'm hoping that that might help me. So when I go back to individual CVs, push that down and try and get it close to the other blue section. Yeah, I think because this is tightening up so much, I'd probably want to push that down, pull that up, so it will start coming away from the other surface. It's inevitable that it will do that at some point. So I'm not sure whether sliding that back really helped a great deal, but so I'm looking more in this area rather than at the front there. Again, it might be that we need to split this surface up into more bits, but I'm always reluctant to do that until it's absolutely necessary, because as soon as you split it up into two bits, you've suddenly got, you know, you split that up into two, you've now got an alignment issue between the two. If you can keep it as one surface, even if it's a bit crazy in terms of its CVs, for as long as possible, then so much better. So hopefully that's far enough round now. Like that. Just save that again. So now it's a question of where do we split this? I mean, we've got the sections on, so we can see how far this surface is away from this one. If I wanted to, I could go in and look at the surface to surface deviation there. And it says maximum 7 point something there. If I go into the information window, because it's only sampling a few points here, if I change this comb step to say 5, then it gives me much more density of information. Here is where they separate anyway, but I can look at that green area. So the comb step is the number of points, or the spacing between points that it's sampling. We can put a threshold on. So if we said we want to see where it's 0.5 or less, we can put 0.5 in there, and there's all those green areas are less than 0.5. There's 1, there's 2. So it gives you an idea of, you know, how close are we. So we're sort of about less than 2 mil in these areas, and a bit bigger in here. Just another way of looking at it rather than just the sections. Now I've just saved that, so I want to do is just to trim convert this somewhere. So I trim converted it here before, and that was too far back. Now, when I was doing that picture, actually, one thing I said is this line here. Initially, I put that down as an X section, which is interesting, actually. That's actually about where I'm going to end up trimming this, I think, or trim converting it. But rather than going down in the X, I said, look, we should probably angle that back a bit, because then when we put surfaces in, we'll get this sort of 90-degree corner on the surfaces here, which is the ideal situation. And if we look at this, if I was to just trim convert this front surface to the front edge of this surface, then we're ending up with quite an acute angle here, and it would be better to have that more at 90 degrees. So it's, strangely enough, it's sort of working out a little bit like the picture, which wasn't expecting that, to be honest. So we can put in a curve here. So I'll put in a curve from somewhere along that edge, doesn't have to be right on the end, in the Z direction. And then we'll move that point back, so that if we use this for trim converting, then it's roughly at 90 degrees. It doesn't have to be exactly, it's just the closer you get your surface corners to 90 degrees, the better. So I'm going to do a trim convert to that line there. I'm just going to save this again, because as always with trim convert, as we've seen, especially on these huge surfaces, anything can happen. So I'm going to say project this surface here. Let's put CVs on that one. Always important to put the CVs on. It's essential. And then we're going to use that. So because I've got Y on and I'm projecting that curve in the Y direction, you see there's a green dot there. So it's creating that curve on surface, which I can then trim convert back to, and that looks absolutely fine as a surface. And then this one, going to do the same again. Now this one, what have we got here? Let's isolate this one. Yeah, I've got these curves and surfaces. If I leave those on, all hell's going to break loose. It's going to mess it up. It'll probably not work, to be honest, because it's going to try and convert to all of the SSIs, or all of the curves on surfaces that we've got there. And so we're going to trim convert to there. I can see one green dot there, but I just wonder whether that was long enough. It was, yeah. So I didn't see the other green dot, but it's done its trick there. So you can see it's not joining up there, but it's actually joining up quite well there. Let's bring the sections back on. And so if I try and align this at this end, then we may get away with it. But we might be at that point where we need to start splitting things up, to be honest, because we're trying to align something which is only degree 7, covers a huge range of surface there, or shape. So if I try and align that there, it's actually not too bad. I know it's not 100% aligned, but what I was worried about is this lifting off the data there. So if I put proxy display on, which shows us the original CVs, and if we zoom in, the CVs have changed quite a lot, a great deal. But actually, the shape is not too bad. It has lifted here, but we can probably rescue that. Now the other thing is, so I take that off, is that I've aligned that in 3D. So if we look at that in top view, the chances are those CVs have gone off. I mean, they will change, because we've no longer got actually that front edge doesn't look great. We've got an edge which isn't actually a straight line anymore, or not in plan view, which is fine. But actually what I've got there doesn't look brilliant. I think what I want to do is make that more straight, and then curves around that way. And I think it's just the way that I did the trim convert. So I'm going to revert on that one. Yes, so just trying to think how to do this, where it's going to be, because obviously that's a planar cut, but really want to tidy that edge up. It's just it's bugging me that that's curving round, which is not really what I wanted it to do. I suppose it doesn't really matter too much. We can adjust it later. Okay. So sorry, I'm just thinking now. Yeah, so I want to align this in here. Yeah, so what I was just trying to remember my train of thought. So I'm going to align that again. I'm going to just keep that edge where it is. But one thing that I want to do is, rather than doing that all in 3D, and you can see it's taken the CVs off, although that's got a curve on it, that's got a curve on it, but this is sort of all zigzaggy here. And the reason is because I haven't held that using vector. So if I use vector and put on Z, then it holds those CVs in the Z view. So it's only moving the CVs up and down in Z view, which is what I wanted to do, so that it's more controlled. Now, obviously, the positioning of that, we've still got a gap of 0.3 and an angle of 1 degree, and it's because we've got a low degree here and a higher degree here. So we're trying to align. If you're trying to align low degree into high degree, it's never going to work in general. So we will have to increase the degree of this. I'm going to take the history off because I don't want this messing around. But because that's sort of roughed in now, and again, it might be worth just having a quick look and seeing what the highlights look like. So you can see that although it's not actually aligned 100%, the highlights are looking pretty good. I will align that later on by just increasing the degree. That's pretty much all I should have to do there. But more importantly, I want to just modify this surface just so that it's back on the data a bit. So we've got G2 coming through here, so that means that we can't touch that hull, but we can actually move these CVs here. So I'm going to move those up and down, and it might be that we can just get away with moving the whole hull. So that fourth hull is okay. We can move that and just see if we can get it back on the data a little bit there. And by pulling that down, of course, it's pulled it below the data here. So let's just lift that hull up a little bit and maybe adjust that one. Something like that. And now I will go back into alignment here and align to there. Notice that vector always gets switched off, which is really, really annoying. So you want to watch out for that, because otherwise we're going to end up with those CVs not being in the place we wanted them to be. So I've put vector back on. Now to get that position down, so it's 0.34, I'm going to increase the degree. So I'll just do it a little bit at a time. So now we're 0.03 and then 5. Now we're very, very close here, 0.006. So incredibly close, and we've got degree 6. The surface at the front, the degree 5 rather, the surface at the front is also degree 5, degree 4. So let's just take that back to degree 4 and see what we've got. So we've got a gap of 0.03, which is quite close. The angle's not very far away either, 0.17. So one possibility is that it's not aligning simply because the CVs on this surface are not in the same spacing as the CVs on this surface. And to get the spacing the same, if we adjust the position influence up to 1, then we can often get, or we should get, an accurate alignment. Obviously, if that's changing the CVs dramatically, then it might not be what you want to do. But if you look at that, it looks absolutely fine. It's not actually affected these CVs in any way beyond there, and the shape's pretty much the same. So I'm definitely going to go with that. And we've kept the, at all times, I'm trying to keep the degree and the number of surfaces as low as possible, because that just helps the whole process. It's very, very tempting to split it all up and get everything to align 100%, but you usually end up with less surfaces that aren't so good in terms of highlights, etc. So we've got that aligned in there. Now we had a surface that came around here, and that surface we've got in a layer somewhere. So I'll put that in body 1. And that was, so the problem there is that I was aligning it into this surface, which actually isn't relevant beyond a certain point. So we will revisit that bit, but I think what we now need to do is try and we need to get the surface in, this blend surface between the top surface and the side surface, get that in, build something down that side that we can then align into there. So maybe we should just isolate. I'll keep it as is. Now the blend going back from here, by the time we get here, the blend edge actually is pretty much on the edge of that surface, and then it'll rise up. So this surface will actually disappear at some point anyway. So I think I want to just get that blend in so we can get this wheel arch flare in. So let's go into surface. Now we'll probably end up manually creating a blend, but initially I find using fillets is always a good thing to do. So we're going to put a caudal fillet in other words, one that's got a constant caudal length, which is defined down here. So the caudal length being the distance between the two edges of the fillet, and I've got G2 curvature on here. So let's go and pick that surface and this surface, and make sure the normals are around the right way. So that one's pointing the wrong way. The arrows are quite difficult to see sometimes, that one in particular, and we just see what that gives us. I'll take automatic off because I don't want that. I'll just put, and I don't really care about the don't actually care about the continuity at the moment. I'm just trying to rough something in. Now you can see the section there. Actually, the section there looks pretty good. That's absolutely spot on. So that was a good guess. Down here it's not so good. It needs to be a bit bigger than that. So we can create a variable fillet here. The other thing is I've got single surface on here, so you can have multiple surfaces on. So if you want a more accurate result, you can have multiple surfaces on with Bezier, and that will give you the most accurate result. And if I was to look at if I actually put curves on surface here and continuity check, you'd probably find that most of those are within tolerance, but it's not what I'm after at the moment. I'm not interested. I just want to have a simplest surface possible. So I'm just going to go for a single surface. So if we go into the menu up here, you can see it's got 11 spans on it, which I wouldn't want probably on my final blend, but it's just a way of creating something. So we can see that 200 millimeters, so the 200 millimeters is from that edge to that edge, works very well down there. There comes a point where we're going to have to change this so that it actually tapers into this edge here. At this end, it comes and goes a bit, and it might be that maybe this surface needs adjusting, that actually that side surface doesn't quite push in far enough. So maybe that is a good size we can go for there. I'm going to I'm taking create history off as well, and in fact I'm going to undo all of that, because having seen that, I think it's this area, just this surface is a bit too far inboard and probably just needs to come out a bit so that we can then push it in towards where the blend needs to go. So let's just take all our CVs off, and we'll put the CVs on here. Now the other thing about this surface is it's big and much bigger than we need. It's, you know, it only goes up to here really. This is all theoretical surface that sits out in space, so I'll make it smaller. It'll just be easier to see and easier to handle. And maybe it'll be useful to put some more sections on in Z in this area. I'm just going to adjust this point. So I'll pull that out so it's closer to the section here, maybe back here as well, and then push the top in so that it starts to get a bit of that, capture a bit of that blend, a bit more of that blend, and that should help the fillet. Exactly where this is going to deviate somewhere, because we're going to put a surface over the top of it, and we know that this flattens out a lot more than this surface can, so it's going to have to deviate somewhere along here. I think maybe I'll put another section on, so I'll make those at 50. Might help a little bit more definition down here. So there is a point where this is going to deviate. Exactly where that is, we don't know, but we're just gonna, we'll work on that as we get there. And the other thing we could do to get this more feeding into that blend, we've got very few CVs here, and we may need some more CVs. Again, the CVs are quite zigzaggy, but because we're dealing with such a big surface and it's very oversized, it really doesn't matter, because when we cut it down, which we probably will do at some point, it's going to help smooth it all out anyway. So I'm going to go back into fillet there and just see what that's given us. So this time the normals were the right way. So that's now much closer to the data, which is good. Obviously I could put history on, and then you can watch that update if you want to, but it's a bit slow when you do that. So I tend to just see what I need to do and then switch that off there. So actually that blend worked out a lot better than I thought it would, because I was thinking we're going to have to do a lot of manual work to get something in here, but actually it's worked out not too bad. Now I should have put the history on, because now I haven't got the history. I'm going to have to pick that object so I can pick it. I can see what it is. If you pick, if I was in that menu and I'd got individual surfaces, so let me just do that again, actually, just to show you something, but let's just get rid of that. So if I go into that fillet menu and say I've got multiple surfaces on, so this would give you a more accurate result. Not that we want that. So we create that. So we've now got multiple surfaces there. So if let's go into there, we can see it's got, well, it's including the 6 surfaces. If I go into, because I haven't got history on, I can pick an individual surface and delete it. So if I need to get rid of it, I can do it that way. But actually, it's all one object. So if I go and pick it as an object rather than the surface, then you can get rid of the thing. But the other thing that you can do, which is often a good thing to do, to be honest, is if you put create history on, and particularly if you've got curve on surface here. So if I do that and say I've got automatic or curve on surface there, and I come out of that and think, oh, I don't want that fillet, you can just do a query edit on it, and then you can just undo the whole thing. So having history on there is really good when you're trying to get the you know, if you're likely to want to delete that fillet and rework it. And of course, if you can also, of course, change all the parameters at any time with query edit in any case. So we will, in this case, I'm going to take that off. I don't want the curves and surface in this particular case, and I just want single, keep it nice and simple. So back to where we were. And so we've got that. Now, when we come down to here, this back edge, as I said, this, looking at this blend, it actually needs to come down to this edge here. This edge eventually washes out to nothing. Now I've adjusted that that's line inside view. Squash that up. I may have that line a little bit too high up there. I've just made it consistent with the front bumper, so no, I think we'll keep it as it is. We're just going to obviously this washes out to nothing here. So we've got this rear wheel arch flare, ends up all blended together. There's no intersect there, but there is an intersect that sort of actually looks like it should be a bit lower than I've got it. But I want to make sure that in the big picture that's in the right place. So what I'm going to do there is just to give us an idea, I'm going to put a curve there, and then I'm just going to move that down. Oh, I want to do that. Move that curve down. I'm just looking at these sections here, thinking that's probably needs to drop a little bit. Obviously, it needs rotating as well. So let's look at that in the side view. I'm just wondering how significant that is. But I do want to take it all the way from the front bumper. I want to make that line go all the way through there. So we make that. So I'll put pivot point somewhere up here. Just rotate that. It's very twitchy when you try and do this. I just feel that should be something like that, but then let's just make that degree 1. It's easier to do. You know, everything can be adjusted. So I think I'm going to change that line. Don't really want to do it, but sometimes you have to do these things to. So I'm going to move that down, and hopefully this won't be too dramatic. Again, I've saved that, of course. I'm going to extend that down and then do a trim convert on that. Let's take that line there. Now, if that line's obviously going to be very important. So just make sure that I've got no curved surface, which I have. I can see that one flowing down there. That's the intersect. So I need to get rid of that before I do a trim convert. So I'm going to project that in the Y direction. Do that. And then we'll have a look and see what that looks like in terms of the data. I think that's going to be, it's not going to be spot on the data, but it's a bit closer here, and I think that'll work a little bit better. Down here it's looks like, you know, we'll probably have to adjust it anyway, but I think I'm going to go with that. All my surfaces are now ending up on the wrong layers, so I'm just going to stick them all in there time being. I know this curve, I think we had a construction surface somewhere, maybe in this one. Yeah, so that was my construction surface, which I'm now going to change. So it's I think that's the thing that I was using. So it's worth putting in these construction surfaces and making sure they're up to date. So this one here, we're going to create a new construction surface here. We can do this to put those CVs on Y0, which is what I want to do. So you can go into the information window, just edit them. It's one way of doing it. Obviously, you can do it off the grid, and there's lots of other ways of doing it. But that's what I'm going to do here. So we're going to do an MS draft of this. 2 surfaces on, as it so often seems to be, and then we'll do a double-sided surface there, and I'll make that 1500, say. And I've got create history on anyway, so we can always adjust that if necessary. And then I can put that surface into our construction layer there. So then everything, like this surface here, that the front edge line, we should actually go around while I'm thinking of it, do that, go and do those changes. So that's a curve that needs to be on this surface here. So let's go and just see how far out that is, see what the change is going to be. So that's 1 point something, so that's fine. We can get away with just dropping that down. Deleting locators. I think I've got two curves there, haven't I? One there and one there. So we'll extend this surface down, and then we can do a trim convert on there to the intersect of this. That will change that curve, so I'm going to get rid of that curve because that's, and then it's not going to be quite in the same place when I project that curve down there. If I project that in the Z direction, so curves match original, that one there, that one there. It says maximum 0, which is not surprisingly because it's going onto a flat surface. So the old one should be projected curve. Because of the numbers there, and I can also tell because I put it in the wrong layer, so that's come up red rather than green. Let's put that in the right layer. So this won't quite join up here, so let's make that join up. So if I go into curve edit there, and then we can align that G2. So I'm going to align that curve to here. And, you know, if you want to check, you can check the deviation between that and that surface again. And then I'm going to align, so I've aligned the curve to another curve, but now I want to make sure that my surface is also aligned to that curve. So in this case, it's going to be exactly on that edge, and I've got position influence of 1 on then, so the CVs will be exactly the same place. So that was all just I just felt that was a little bit high there compared with the data, and so it's worth, you know, it didn't actually take that long to do. Obviously, the earlier you spot these things, the better. But sometimes it's inevitable that you find something that's not quite right. at a really late stage, and then you've got a lot of rebuilding to do. But if you can avoid that, so much the better. This will have changed these surfaces. We can, but it's only changed them by a microscopic amount, to be honest. Right, so now we want to build the rest of this blend in, and this is going to be a manual. It's going to be a manual operation here. I just want to get this edge to go into this edge here, and then we can build something above that. So I know that having changed this surface, this is probably not going to be quite aligned. Doesn't really matter because we can align that later. Let's put in a curve from here. So I'm just going to do an edit point curve from this end to here somewhere. Doesn't actually have to go all the way to the end, because as I say, this surface is digging into this, the haunch here of the rear wheel arch there. Let's go back into there. And then let's just change that. I'll make that degree 3, because with degree 3, we can then align it with G2, and I want history on here. So I'm going to align that there. And obviously that's dropping below the surface, the edge there. Actually, we want to make that degree 4. And the reason is because at this end, we want at least G1 into this edge. Of course, this is dropping below, so let's query edit that. And then we can, oh, where's my CV's gone? It must be, oh, it's that one there, isn't it? So let's pull that up there until it starts to pull away. CV has been left behind, so if we bring that up so that the CVs are reasonably, I mean, we could actually make that degree 5, that might be better. I might actually make that degree 1 and then make it degree 5. Does that work? No, it doesn't work in there, does it? So let's go into here and make that degree 5. The reason I'm doing it that way is because it then oh, we've still got history on. Let's get rid of the history. If I get rid of the history and make that degree 1, and then OK it, and then make it degree 5, then the spacing of CVs will be constant, which is probably the better thing to do, to be honest. Gives us a starting point. So I will align that in G2 and that end in G2 as well. Doesn't have to be G2, but why not? And then actually I'm going to adjust that a little bit up there. So I have gone away from my regular spacing, but something like that. Very important, of course, that curve is above that edge. So you might want to go into locators and you can just go and check that, or you could just do it visually, of course, by squashing the view up. But the locators is a good way of doing it. And you can see that actually it crosses over a little bit here, which is not what we want. If we did a non-proportional scale, we'd be able to see the same thing. And it's because if I look at that curve and look at the CVs, it's because, you know, this is aligned in G2, but it's that 4th point, which is down to this end, that's slightly below the line there. So if we query edit that and just bring that back up there, you'll see that, you know, now we've got that tapering down to nothing, which is what we want. Problem with when you do this in this sort of compressed view is the spacing of the CVs isn't always very obvious. You might find that the spacing of the CVs is quite, it doesn't look right at all, but it's all right here. I'm going to push that along there again. Obviously, if this is tapered, then you want the minimum value right at the end. It's got to be right at the end, and that tells you that we've got that line in the right place.